You're listening to Am I the Bolcast, the only podcast about Magic the Gathering. Actually, I'm being told right now that there are very many of them. There are? Couldn't be possible. I'm your host, Mike Carrozza, also known as Mark Carbonza. And I will say that I'll do that bit until I get in trouble. Shout out to Saffron Olive. This is my way of not getting in trouble, is by shouting him out. Please don't hate me for it. I just think it's pretty fun. Probably better known as Mark Carbonza, and I am the author of the column Am I the Bolas over at Commander's Herald, joined in studio across two countries and different homes. We have my dear co-host, the brew brain himself, author of the How They Brew It column at commandersherald.com, Games Freak SA, probably better known as Michael Celani. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. I decided to take you up on that thing where you're saying we're in different countries. I've decided to split my house across both the Illinois and the Missouri side of St. Louis. So now we're in at least 5 different states.
That's very fun and very cool. And I love that you put so much effort into that. But oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare. Also joining us from across the world is our producer, Morgan Sanchez. Hi, Morgan. Howdy and howdy you do?
I'm doing good. My pencil is getting smaller and smaller the longer I transcribe everything the both of you say.
Oh, well, are you taking this down? How about this?
It's all there.
Oh boy.
Smaller and smaller.
Do you use bigger letters the louder I get?
You have to capitalize the important parts.
You got it. Anyway, this is I'll tell you what, I've been playing a lot of Commander. I've seen a lot of decks recently, and I have been tempted by Unfinity. I'll tell you what, I saw DK, Finder of the Lost, I believe is the name of the character, and Myra the Magnificent, and I thought, I've been trying to build a Grixis deck, and I want it to be silly. So if it's already going to be so silly, I might as well try to build it with unofficial partners and partners that people will be like, I don't know, man, maybe. So we're talking about attraction decks. We're talking about two legends that have nothing to do with each other. They share one color, one theme, and I want to build it. Let me have some fun with it. Michael, what do you think about Rule Zero? What do you think about decks that take advantage of this conversation that we have at the beginning of EDH games?
Because EDH isn't just a game, Mike. It's a lifestyle.
There we go.
Anyway, I think that Rule Zero decks are pretty fun. You know, you can always whip out something that's wacky, really fun, has all the old unset cards that are kind of problematic now. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, go back in that file and find out what's been going on. I particularly like the ones with the name that go around the border entirely.
Because reading the card explains the card, but I want to pretend to be illiterate.
And of course, when we talk about Rule Zero decks, ostensibly what we're talking about are illegal decks that are not officially recognized as legal in the Commander format. And so what you have to do is have a chat at the beginning of the game with your pod and say, hey, I have this deck. It's technically not legal, and I would like to play it this way. So, Morgan, have you ever come across any Rule Zero decks? Any decks with non-legal Commander cards in him?
I'm willing to play against any commander deck as long as I can use my beer bottle caps as tokens. So the definition of rules changes.
Okay. Well, that's pretty fun. I can dig behind that. Do you also, what if you're drinking cans? Do you want to use the tabs too?
You could just put the whole thing on there.
Okay, so a whole can. So that'd be a construct, and then the tabs themselves could be Thopters. Okay, I think we're dealing with an artifact deck here.
Morgan, do you even play EDH, or is this just an excuse for you to drink?
Most of the time, I don't play Commander. Most of the time, I also drink.
Huh. Well, that's a puzzle of a sentence. Do I hear the phone lines ringing?
Somebody's got to do it.
Okay, I guess we got a caller then. Let's take it over to that caller right now. Welcome back to Am I the Bolcast, the podcast where you friggin' ask me a question and I go, yeah, you're probably the bad guy here, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm your host, Mike Carrozza, probably better known as Mark Carbonza. Again, sorry, Seth, I'm not going to keep doing that. I might keep doing it, but I'm probably... Look, you know what? No promises. It's, you know what? The podcast world, it's the Wild West. We got a Wild West set coming. You deal with it. You know what I'm saying? But also, Seth, I'm so sorry. This week, we got a caller on the line. Caller, who are you? Tell us where you're from, who you at?
Hi, hello. My name is Dan Sheehan, and I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Los Angeles' own Dan Sheehan. Dan Sheehan of the Commander Sphere and Pie Break podcasts. Welcome to Am I the Bolcast? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's our heat wave just broke here in LA, so I'm not melting in my office, which is a nice change of pace. It's been good. Things are looking up for old Danny boy.
Dan, let me ask you something. So Commander Sphere is no more, but you have a new exciting podcast happening right now that I'm thrilled about, considering the upcoming interviews and such. Can tell the audience a bit of what you're doing over at Pie Break. What's this show for you?
So Pie Break is a show about the color pie. The color pie is my favorite part of Magic. It's what's drawn me to Magic. Like, I'm very much like a story, lore, and flavor forward player. And I've always loved the color pie as a tool for storytelling and a tool for like philosophical discussion. As a writer, I found it to be tremendously useful, just sometimes being like, all right, like, who is this character? What do they want? Like, where do they fall in the color pie?
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly useful. And so I wanted to make a show that took the color pie out of Magic and into sort of the rest of the world. Some folks who used to listen to Commander Sphere may notice some similarity to our old Identity Crisis episodes, whereas with those, we'd take a color, would be like, all right, this week we're doing Boros, and we would figure out a bunch of stuff that's Boros.
I always loved those episodes.
They were so fun to do. And then
they were so fun to listen to. Kept it informative and made it a game. It was awesome.
Yeah, it always worked really well because I would be, I'd be like reading through all of Morrow's articles about stuff, and then me and Rachel would be like riffing about just like she would come up with these categories lists of like different just random objects and things. And so those episodes were basically like, let's find a color and find all the stuff that's that color. And this show is kind of a flip on that, where it's like each week a guest comes on and we talk about something they love outside of Magic, and we figure out what color that stuff is.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's been a real blast to record. It debuts in October, and then we'll be running consistently through at least February. I've banked a lot of episodes for this because I usually don't have this much time on my hands.
Damn.
Yeah, when I fixate on something,
on a weekly schedule, you got that many?
Oh, this will be twice a month. So sometimes 3 times a month. It's like every other week.
You've been busy?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I've been a busy man. Yeah, as it turns out, this strike really made me go like, oh, I gotta find another thing to do, or I'm just doing my day job all the time, and that I gotta do something other than that.
Yeah. The day job part of things is a little bit like, if that's all I'm doing, then what's it all for?
Yeah, you get it. It's like, you know, in writing and comedy, it's like if you don't like. Day jobs are great because it keeps the lights on, but if you don't have another thing going on, you're just like, oh boy, what's it for? What am I doing these emails for?
But you know what else? I'm just remembering, speaking of writing, you've also written for WotC for the story of Magic. Your Squeeze story was one of my favorites.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite things I've ever written. It like came together so nicely. It's like while I was putting it together, I was like very lost on it for like a solid month, and then I think I was focusing too much on like my own like little nostalgic favorite pieces and stuff, and then I just like had one night where I just like dove deep on like, I was just like, let's just like peel everything else away and like focus on the character here. And like from there, it just I really love where it landed, and I've been very happy with it. And I was so happy to see that like the small but vocal hive of Squeeze fans was so into it.
Let's actually, you know what? Here's the fun part about doing a podcast with just like a friend of yours is that we're just hanging out, but then also there's a reason that I have to have you on the podcast, and there's a whole
Oh, buddy,
Yeah.
I know this dance well. I keep doing this on Pie Break where I'm like, oh, wait, we're doing a show that has a theme. I had one where we forgot to do the
Oh
color
no,
pie
people
part
are
at the
gonna
end.
listen to this and we're just I like the fun old art. The invasion had really cool stuff going on. I love Torment so much. Oh, wait a second. Are you a mean person when you play the game? You know? So Daniel, are you a mean person when you play the game? That's how I'm gonna ask the question now.
I don't think I'm a mean person. If anything, I think my biggest problem in Commander as a player is like this bone deep fear of confrontation that is
Interesting.
probably a result of I don't know. I was baptized Catholic and I'm Midwestern,
Right
so I
back
just
at you, baby.
yeah, it's just like I just don't want to make anybody's day worse, and so like
Oh yeah.
somebody will be I'll know that they're doing some shit over there, and I'll just be like, well, they're having fun.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're here for? They're having a nice time. And so like I leave a lot of wins on the table because I don't want to make my friends sad.
Oh yeah.
And then so I think that's my main problem is because like no one's extending that courtesy to me. Like when I assemble my nonsense, like someone's like, oh yeah, I should probably put a stop to that. That's just how the game is played.
I think that's why I like playing with you is that I've done that. I do that too. I like doing that.
I think if there's one thing I do in game that frustrates people, it's probably that if someone is doing something wild and goofy and I see it as like sufficiently earned or whatever, I'm always going to let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like-
well, that's it. I don't really mess with counter spells to begin with. So
Yeah.
but if I do have one and you're doing something silly, come on. What's life for if not for the bit?
It's like so it's kind of like trying to build a sandcastle where you're building a sandcastle while the tide's coming in. Like that is
Yeah.
Commander.
Yeah.
And so it's like, the first sandcastle you build is like really fun and tall and like it has the little thatching and stuff. Like, maybe you get to really pack it into that bucket so that it has a pattern on it. And
Yeah.
it looks nice. And so it's like every time those waves come in, you have to hastily rebuild. And the sandcastle is always like a little worse every single time. So for every cool win con you stop, like whatever comes after it, it's a higher chance that it's going to be something boring. So I'm never going to like, stand in the way of someone doing something fun and cool.
And so what do you have a story for this week, or do you have or a pet peeve that you'd want to discuss?
So I think the thing I do that actually like can frustrate people I play with a lot is I staunchly believe that the rules of Commander were meant to be broken specifically with who you choose as your commander. So I build a lot of Rule 0 decks.
All right. Okay.
And so I think if there's one thing I do where I sometimes feel like a bad guy, it's that I will show up with like a fully built Rule 0 deck and be like, can I play this deck? And I'll always say, like, I'll always be like, feel free to like tell me no, feel free to, but I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, and I'll just swap out the commander for this other commander. Cause I'm like, no, I built it for this. Like either I play it as I want it or I'll play something else. And like, I always make it clear that I can play something else, but then there's kind of that, no matter how much you say that, people always can tell you want to play it. And so they're like, am I going to disappoint my friend right now? Or, and so it's like, I have these, like the latest ones have been, I've been tweeting about this one nonstop, but there was a Gavin Verhey unknown event card called Gen Confider of Ages, which is basically Year of Printing
which
Matters.
Is very silly.
I have every card in the deck. The deck has like 2 to 3 cards from every year in Magic's history, and I have them labeled with stickers to show, like in very clear print, like what year it is from, so that it's easy to track and easy for people. Like I've gone out of my way to make sure it is a deck that is not like sneakily getting out of hand. Because I also believe that like a Rule 0 deck should lose way more than it wins. Yeah, if a Rule 0 deck is winning a ton, then you just broke the rules to dunk on your friends, and that's not fun. I just want to do interesting stuff. And so with Gen, it's like basically it's a Primal Surge deck without Primal Surge, where it's like almost entirely permanence, and I'm just trying to like I'm playing cascade spells and spells that vomit up permanence to get as many on the battlefield as possible, because Gen gets +1/+1 for each one. And if Gen hits 30, because it was a celebration of Magic 30, and when he attacks, then you win the game. So I'm trying to actually get 30 permanents from 30 different years onto the battlefield. Yeah, it's like that's a ton of permanence. Especially one thing I saw, someone was like, "Oh, well, if you make this a lands deck, it's actually not that hard." And I was like, "Well, that's why it can't be a lands deck, or else it's just cheating." Like, so easy to get 30
Where's the
lands
fun
on
in that?
the battlefield.
Where's the fun?
But yeah, between that and then I built a deck around.
Hold on a
Obsidian
second. I'm not done with this real quick. I just want to. I think it's funny. You're saying Gen, and I'm thinking. I thought it was Gen for Gen Con, because didn't this happen at Gen Con?
It probably is Gen. It did happen at Gen Con. It probably is Gen.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. No, it probably is that. Like, especially like given the name of the convention, it's hard for me to like read it as Gen without a J. But I think that's almost certainly how it's read.
That just stuck with me for a quick sec. And you said Obsidian.
Fireheart.
Oh yeah.
So this card's kind of infamous because it has flavor text. It has reminder text that's basically flavor text, where it puts a blaze counter on a land, and then for as long as that land has a blaze counter on it at the beginning of your upkeep, the land deals 1 damage to the owner of the land. And the infamous reminder text is the land continues to burn after Obsidian Firemaw has left the battlefield.
That's great. That's very fun.
The funky part, right? Doesn't that rule?
It does.
And the funky part of it is it stays even if you're eliminated. Like the counter remains. Yeah. And so, like the point of the deck is basically just to like throw down a bunch of blaze counters and then get myself killed so that I can have a lasting effect on the game.
So
it's like
this is fun.
Using like treasonous ogre effects to like throw down as many blaze counters as I can. Because each land can only have one, so it's not like you can do like an infinite mana combo or something like that. And it's still
as long as it has a
no,
blaze
they don't
counter,
stack.
It has okay.
Yeah, so it's like you can put more than one on there, but it only has like the 1 damage per land. And so yeah, it's just like, it's sort of like throwing a Descent to Avernus out there where everyone's just like taking damage and it accelerates.
Descent of Avernus also great card. People should be running more. Get more games in a night. Why don't you?
But yeah, so I build a lot of decks like this, and I can't stop myself from like actually putting them together, beyond just making them a theoretical exercise and like taking them to Commander Night.
So is your question more or less like, am I the Bolas for being the guy who shows up with Rule 0 decks without a backup for that backup commander for that deck, but with other decks to propose?
Yeah, like I guess that's the real question is like, am I the Bolas for asking to play these decks? Like, like obviously I have other decks. I'm not like coming in like being like, this is the deck, this is all I got, or I'm leaving. Dan
is miming a gun to his head. We're not
for the folks at home.
And somebody take the soundboard away from me. I swear to God.
No, give him a second soundboard that's louder. I'm the devil on your shoulder, man. And I'm telling you, that soundboard needs 100 more sounds, 1,000 sounds.
Buddy, I've got the Price is Right theme song on here. I could just play that and get us into a lot of trouble.
But yeah, so I guess that's my question is, am I the Bolas for bringing those decks, asking to play those decks? And
it is interesting
for hoping that people consider them.
I love, so, you know me, like, here's the thing to the listeners, we are friends. So Dan and I were pals. So we're in the same like group chat Discord together where I'll see these lists and be like, I'd love to play against this, right? Because it is like within a trusted group, and it's somebody whose intentions I know, and somebody that I know his whole deal is, I'm going for the fun of it. I love this game. Here's my way of having a love letter to the fun times that I can see happening. Like I love when you send us a deck list, because I'm like, what's this gonna be? You know what I mean? It's almost gotten to a point where I'm a little disappointed when you just pick a regular commander. Like you've sent us enough Rule 0 lists where I'm like, you're interested in Ariette of the Charmed Apple? Okay.
It did feel weirdly straightforward. I think I needed her after building that Gen deck where I was just like, oh yeah, I've been thumbing through print years for like 8 hours. I just need something that it's like I can build it real fast. And
Auras, go. Yeah.
Yeah. Something cheap, easy, and fun.
See, I think that the question of whether or not you're the Bolas here is, it comes down to something that's very subtle and cultural, which is, you mentioned this, grew up Catholic, grew up in the Midwest. I'm Canadian. I grew up Catholic, although I'm the first to say that I'm extremely confrontational, almost too much. Like I need to calm down. But I'd say that like there is an element of showing up to an LGS being like, look, I have 5 decks with me. 2 of them are Rule 0 decks. These are the decks. Here's what they do. Here's what they're all about. I'm not making any concession on those decks. If we're playing and you give me the thumbs up, I'm going with those decks, and I really want to play those decks. But if you say no, I still have decks I enjoy. We will play that. And so ultimately, it does already set up this element of, if you say no, I'm not getting the experience that I want out of this. And so already there's a guilting thing happening, especially within our cultures of the Midwest and the Canadian thing.
I get like guilt for the guilt, where I'll be like, I know no matter how much I stress that I'm not going to be mad if they say no. I know that they can tell I want to play this. And so it feels like just by creating them at all, I'm creating this like sort of potential negative situation, which is why typically like, you know, I bring them mostly around friends, but like at cons and stuff, there is always this element of like,
yeah, but here's the thing about cons. So this is another element. Like I'm bringing this question to only LGS. Like we're gonna come back to that in a sec. But I'm thinking like cons and stuff. Not for nothing, Dan. You've got like you got a quantity to you in the in the sphere. So people that are coming to hang out and play with you at cons, they'll know who you are to an extent, or at least they'll really know who you are, and you'll have that added element of trusted play that comes from being a Magic content creator with some of some note, and has like some sort of like a reputation. You know what I mean? Your reputation is, especially coming off of Commander Sphere, has been, you and Rachel were both the silliest of sillies. Just doing like a Magic podcast that's primarily comedy, right? Like that's not something that the Magic podcasting world had. And so, you know, if you have your fans and people that know you, like if you're showing up to a con and they know who you are, they'll be like, well, of course, Dan is going to have a Rule 0 deck. What's this one all about? Oh, you want to hurt us after we've killed you? All right, let's do that. Versus showing up to an LGS. Let's say you're on a little jaunt to Nebraska, and you find yourself at an LGS out in Nebraska, and you've got your 4 decks or whatever, and you're like, hey, gang, anybody here listen to podcasts? And they'll be like, hell no. And you'll be like, sick, dude. Okay, you guys familiar with Rule 0? And they're like, yes. And you tell them, I've got these 4 decks, 2 of which are not legal Commander decks because of the Commander exclusively. Here are the themes. If that sounds fun to you, I would very much like the permission to play against you with these decks. And if not, I have my other decks. You're putting that decision on them, and it does kind of feel like a bit of a pressure to put on somebody. Does it make you a villain though? I don't think so. I think offering a new experience to a group of people that can be at once entertaining and at once eye-opening is just something that I think this game is all about. You know, whether it comes in the form of showing up at a game and finding out that like this synergy works with this. The first time I saw Mangara of Corondor, I think that's the first edition. Yeah, so Mangara of Corondor is tap, and that's the cost, just tap, and the ability is exile Mangara and target permanent. The first time I saw that, I was like, well, okay, this is a one-time use. That's not going to be very good. All right, whatever. First time I saw somebody use that with an untap ability and then bounce or flicker Mangara to keep it and just keep doing it, I was like, that's allowed? That's crazy. You know? So that same feeling is what I get from hearing you be like, man, this card that doesn't really technically exist, I want to play with it. Or like this card that's not a legendary creature should be, it's unique enough that I think we should try it out.
Yeah, it has the gravitas of a legendary creature.
It definitely does. And I think it's beautiful to come to the table and be like, do you guys mind? And people be like, sure. And you're like, that's allowed. I think we gotta end it there. I guess. Is there anything that you want to leave folks with, listeners who are gonna check out Pie Break when that comes out? Do you have a date set for that?
Yeah, the first Pie Break will be coming out on the 3rd of October, and it's not one you're going to want to miss. We've got a very cool guest for that.
Okay.
And then it will come out. There will be another one the week after that, and then it'll be every other week from there.
And now, is it already available on? Is there already an RSS feed that you can kind of subscribe to?
That's the great thing. If you were already subscribed to Commander Sphere, it will be on the same feed.
Awesome.
But yeah, the feed is out there now, and I believe it is still under Commander Sphere at time of recording. But probably by the time you hear this, it will have been converted to Pie Break.
Yeah, very likely it's already Pie Break and you're ready to go. So make sure you subscribe and check that out. Thank you so much, dude. I appreciate you being on here.
Of course, man.
Call in anytime. Give us a shout if you feel like talking about something else. You're more than welcome to. That does it for us. Am I the Bolcast for this chat? It's time to kick it over to Michael Celani and see what he's got cooking up. Thank you once again to our guest, our caller, Dan Sheehan, formerly of Commander Sphere Podcast and now Pie Break. So be sure to check out Pie Break Podcast by Dan Sheehan. A lot of cool guests coming up. He told me them privately, and you're going to want to listen up, folks. You're going to want to listen up. That was a great conversation, but I think we need to distill it down. Morgan, can you break this one down for us?
Dan wants to know, am I the Bolas for strongly requesting to play a Rule Zero deck?
Okay.
Strongly requesting, insisting, if you will.
But not.
I don't know that. Okay. So here's the thing. I would agree with insisting if all he brought were the Rule Zero decks. The way it's presented is you've got 5 decks and you've got 3 decks that are legal commander decks that don't require a Rule Zero permission to play, but 2 decks that are led by playtest cards or Heroes of the Realm commanders or illegal partners or something along those lines, and saying, I have these 3 decks that you can choose from, but I really would like to play one of these decks, and I don't have a backup commander for it, which a lot of people do have for these kinds of decks, and saying, I don't have a backup commander and I don't want to play this deck with any other commander but the one that I have for it. It's a yes or no, cut and dry. Do you feel comfortable playing against this deck? I would really like to play this deck. Now, that's why I'm saying strongly requests, because strongly requesting is kind of like you're saying you really want it, and you're not really giving an out beyond the other decks that you brought with you. And frankly, you're perfectly happy playing these decks. You're perfectly happy playing any of the legal decks you've constructed. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them, right? So you really want to play the Rule Zero decks, but you have decks that you're happy playing. People aren't necessarily being pressured to the extent of like, okay, I'm going to have to pick a Rule Zero deck. However, I can see how some folks who are not comfortable with saying no to somebody's joy would feel in that situation. Celani, what do you think? Talk to me, buddy.
I have to imagine this is what it feels like to be a vegan trying to suggest a restaurant to all your friends, right? Because you're like, oh, I really want to go here. It's my thing, you know, like I can go to these other places. They have a salad. Salads suck. No one likes them, especially if they're filled with kale.
Ooh.
But like if you're offering these other options and they have the option to choose it, you might not be as happy as if you had your tofu fiesta. I don't know. I live right next to a vegan restaurant and I still don't know what it entails.
You should have one of those locked and loaded.
Yeah. But like, as long as there's the option, I don't think you can possibly be the Bolas, right?
That's a fair take. Morgan, do you want to, is it time to take to a vote? What do you think?
I think it's time we take it to a vote, Mike.
Okay. So let's tell the folks at home what our system is here.
Well, in order to make things fair and equitable, between myself and Celani, we each get 1 vote as to whether or not Dan Sheehan is the Bolas.
1 vote per.
One
Yes.
vote per.
So 2
Yes.
total points. We don't get to share a vote.
Right. So it's 1 vote each.
Right.
Okay.
With Carrozza having 3 votes,
Mhm.
just in case of any potential tiebreakers.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, that does make sense. Okay, Morgan, how do you feel? How are you voting? Is Dan Sheehan the Bolas?
He's the Bolas.
You
He's
think
the Bolas
so?
because if you've got 5 decks and you
Mhm.
have 3 Rule 0 decks and 2 non, you know someone there is going to be burnt, someone's going to be upset, someone's going to say no, and you have a backup for it because you know someone's going to say no, you know someone's not going to want to do it. It sounds a bit Bolasy to me.
Okay, well, that's one way to interpret that. I feel like it's kind of like you're bringing it because there are some people who don't like to play the illegal commander decks. That's what I feel like, right? Michael, how do you feel about it? Is he the Bolas?
I don't think he can be the Bolas. He has alternatives. He's got alternative options.
Mm-hmm.
The only person that he's being a Bolas to is himself, because he's setting himself up for these high expectations, these lofty goals.
Uh-huh.
And he's just going to get crushed again and again. It's like going on Tinder. It's like, ugh.
Who needs it? I'm having a hard time with this one. I won't lie to you because I think while it is fun to present a deck like this to a table, and a lot of them have been fun to play against, and oftentimes in my experience, you sit down with a group of people, they're open to something like this. They're open to like a new experience and a new deck like that. So I think that it's less likely that he can be the Bolas in this situation, but I think the way he went about it is a bit like tapping into the being too polite, the societal element of like, well, I don't want to say no to you. You definitely want to play this. I guess I'll let you play this. Now the decks you described do feel underpowered and are definitely decks that I would be curious enough to see in action, but that's me. Some people don't like playing against cards that aren't legal in their format, and that's fair. So is Dan the Bolas? I think yes, but only the teensy tiniest bit, maybe. Oh, but I also think no. Okay, so I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna split my vote. I'm gonna split my points. My vote counts for 3, but I'm gonna say yes, no, and then my last vote is maybe so. And so that'll do it. Is Dan Sheehan the Bolas? I don't know. You decide. Be honest with me. Was that a lazy out? Was that too lazy? Okay, he's the Bolas. I want to.
That's the whole point.
Okay, well, fine. He's the whatever. Dan, forgive me. You're the Bolas.
You can't vote for the Green Party in this hypothetical voting scenario we have here. You got to pick one or the other.
Okay, what?
It has to be non-unanimous. We have to fight about it. We have to have like a different opinion about it and just make it awful so that it just never. You're the one making the decision. That's
and I am making the decision.
Yeah, like.
But I'm saying I don't know what to decide, and I'm saying, you know what, audience? Okay, fine. I decided. You're the Bolas. Anyway, I think that'll call the episode.
Wait.
What? What?
Hold on.
Okay.
Before we go,
what?
I have one thing I want to bring up. This has been on my mind for maybe the past 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be more good green mana rocks.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Every green deck, what do you have? You've got Rampant Growth. You've got Cultivate. You've got Kadama's Reach. You've got Sakura Tribe Elder. You've got Forest. All these things that you put in your deck that add lands to the battlefield, right? And it makes it better because you don't really see lands getting blown up at all. They just kind of come in and it's like, well, I guess they're there forever. Unless you're playing against Clothis's I'm going to blow up all your lands typo. No, there need to be good green mana rocks that have the downside of being an artifact that can just be blown up. But they have a reason to be there, Because otherwise it's like, you look at Simic Signet. No one plays Simic Signet. It's just terrible. Especially because it's really hard to say. Have you ever tried saying Simic Signet out loud? It's hard.
Simic Signet.
Speak for yourself.
Simic Signet. I'm having a hard time.
What do you guys think? Should there be more, let's say 3 mana value rocks, make green, with some sort of upside. Should there be more of those?
I guess the Great Henge doesn't count because it costs 2. Am I right? It is fun that the only green mana rock I could think of is the Great Henge. And I guess Moss Diamond, but I don't know. What would the utility be for green mana rocks? Why would we want them?
I don't know. Maybe it has an enters the battlefield effect, like it causes one of your creatures to fight another creature,
Oh, that'd be fun.
or something like that. And I'm not talking about like mana dorks here, because we've already got like a ton of those. And the reason that those are popular is because they're really cheap, right? Because Land of War Elves is 1 mana. You get a green, you're off to the races. No, I'm talking about more mid-range type artifacts with upside, like we've seen with Cursed Mirror, or like we've seen with Wand of the World Soul, or
Crowded
the black
Crypt.
one that makes decayed zombies, that
That's
sort
the
of
one.
thing.
So what would greens look like? And why would it be on a mana rock instead of just a sorcery that gets you a land and does something else? Because if you're saying an artifact that enters the battlefield and fight, like makes a creature you control fight another creature you don't control, then that's like a cool idea. But that's just you can play a fight spell that has a basic land fetch on it, probably somewhere in the vastness of Magic the Gathering.
Because having it be on an artifact is a downside. You could blow it up.
Oh yeah, I definitely think we should have more downsides for green, but we're at a point where green is saturated with lands coming to play. So do we have another frame of like what do we think about land destruction being more regular?
I don't know. What do you think about the artifacts idea, Morgan? Let's start there.
I think that you should be, if you're not playing Simic Signet, you should be in blue and green anyway, and be playing Memnarch as your commander with Land of War Elves.
I don't think you can
use Memnarch to make Land of War Elves an artifact, and that would be your mana rock.
Isn't Memnarch mono blue?
Memnarch is mono blue.
This is a rule 0 situation.
Oh, of course. I understand now.
We needed that clarification, definitely. I'd say I don't know that we need more artifacts. I don't think I think it'd be great for the game if we got them, but they'd have to be pretty powerful to replace Rampant Growth and Kadama's Reach and Cultivate and all those cards that already fetch lands to play. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be cool to balance out a color that is kind of untouchable in the way that it ramps. Because if Vandal Blast hits the stack and I'm a blue-black player, that means I'm set back to the Stone Age. But if I'm the white-green player, I'm just fine, you know? So I guess it would be nice, but I don't know if we can go back to a point where that's even possible in EDH, given the card pool being all cards of all time, save for a couple banned ones. So I'm not sure. What would be an artifact that makes you want to play it in green as like a mana rock?
Well, this is just off the top of my head, but let's say it costs green.
Okay.
It taps for green.
Yes.
Let's also add 2 life on top of it.
Uh-huh.
And whenever a creature enters the battlefield, let's say you get a counter on it and you draw a card.
Okay, that'd be great. What if it tapped for green instead?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good mana rock for green. It would have to be legendary, of course. I feel like that would be pretty good. Maybe it should cost 3. Feels like it should maybe cost 3. Anyway, I think that takes us to the close of the episode. You can check us all out online. Check out our work at commandersherald.com and take care of yourselves and love each other and don't be mean. We need to figure out a sign off for this whole thing, I think.